Welcome to the Man Sports Fan podcast. This is your host, Philip Arthur Schultz. I'm with Christopher P. Allen Smith and Brian Fremming. Welcome, boys. How's it going?
Going well. Loving life. How about yourselves?
It's good. This is take two. We started take one, guessing that Fremming was sleeping. We were right. And then 30 seconds in, he texted us as like, I'm awake. I've gone out of my slumber to join you to the podcast.
He was like the Undertaker coming back from the dead here.
The question is, where is his brother Kane? That's the question.
No doubt.
How long did you sleep for?
That was approximately a 37-minute nap. Feeling very refreshed.
True power nap.
No doubt.
Well, we all have kids. Sometimes you need the kind of refresher before the big event. I want to start harkening back to a time of, glory. Let's call it glory. We were around 12 years old when internet kind of became a thing. Maybe we were 10 or 11. There was, before this thing called texting, there was what was called Instant Messenger. So the question for you guys is, did you have AOL or MSN?
Love this question, Phil. I had both. So I don't know if you want me to elaborate, but I was in on both. I actually was an AOL user first, MSN user second. But eventually I did stick with MSN, I think, longer than AOL. I don't know about how both of you navigated, but AOL was what broke me in. That was my introduction. And then MSN followed. I think AOL kind of faded out for me.
Interesting. Chris?
MSN Instant Messenger all the way. The Baraboo crew was all about MSN Messenger. And it was a great time. It was a simple time. Started a lot of relationships, ended a lot of relationships. And it was just great times.
I really think it is where your friends were, because I was on the AOL train and I never go back. AOL was the best. My screen name was Philby25. I forgot my password, so then I went to Philby26, and that's where I think a lot of even my passwords, my other names throughout fantasy football, Yahoo, that's stuck. What was your guys' screen names?
It's a wonderful question, Phil. Off the top, I cannot recall. I think MSN was something like O'Brien Lucky 17, something like that. How about you, Chris?
You went
I mean, I was a big Slim Shady fan, so naturally Slim _ Smitty 34.
Did you need the underscore, or did you decide to put it in?
How could you not go wrong with an underscore back in the day?
Did you guys have away messages?
Absolutely. That was the only way to go.
Did you
when you
have
left the computer? What could you do? They had to know where you were, so always needed an away message, no doubt.
Okay. Chris, what was your top away message?
I was not an away message guy. I was always on. If you needed me to be there, I was on. I'm assuming yours was chilling, doing some stuff.
That was the number one away message. Number two is sledding, even at any time of the year, which caused some conflict amongst my friends. But it was a good time.
Now let me bring up, we only had one computer, I think, in the household, which was a factor. So we had to share the computer. And of course, these are the days where if you're on the good old internet, you'd tie up the phone line or vice versa. So that was always a good one of, barking at someone in the family to get off the phone line or whatnot, or you're being told to get off the internet to free up the phone line. Good times.
So you guys had dial-up?
Absolutely.
My younger sister still recalls a moment. I don't remember this, but she says that there was a time when she was on the computer and I apparently picked up the chair, moved her, she says I tipped the chair over and then proceeded to go on because I had to talk to someone at a certain time.
That was Cassie, right?
Yes.
Very
Yeah.
WWE like. I like it.
It had to be on, you know?
I was
Had
going
a
to
date.
say, your older sister would have never gone for that.
No.
I missed the dial up, but I had friends that had it. My dad, he was techie. He's going to be like a nuclear physicist at one point. So he just like knew tech stuff. And we got cable early. So I don't remember dial up. I was one of the lucky ones. So
You are lucky. I still remember the tone. I could still repeat the dial tone in my head.
Oh yes,
It's great
fresh.
stuff.
one day, maybe we'll go back to that. Steve Jobs, you ruined it for all of us. Well, if you guys have other memories that you want to share over Twitter or otherwise known as the X, thank you, Elon. Check us out at Madman Sports Fan. You could post a memory, a question. This is a sports show. We don't talk about the olden days in relation to technology. So let's move on to Badger basketball. Big week this week. Tough week in some ways. On Saturday, played Iowa. Lost in overtime, 88-86. This one, I think, hit us in a different way, talking to you guys on the text thread, over phone as well. What was your reaction? What were you feeling as you were watching? What kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, it did not feel good with us going into Iowa. We just historically have never played well at Iowa. You obviously like to see some more offensive production overall, which is somewhat encouraging. This is a game you wanted, I think, overall. Yeah, it's a game I think it kind of to me defines like I think you guys are more thinking okay, this team could be 4 or 5 seeds still, maybe something like that, and I'm more in that back end thinking they're more closer to an 8 now, and really more I think settling at like a 7. And so I think this is a game where it's just down the stretch of the season you'd hope we could pull out something close like this, and just really disappointing, at least in the Iowa game. And then I know we can get talking Maryland as well, but I think you guys have both hit on it as we've texted in our thread and whatnot, like 3-point shooting, we just are not there. We just cannot seem to shoot the ball, and confidence is not there overall. And then so we have to then rely on defense and getting to the free throw line, being able to attack the hoop, etc. We're playing the post, and just not the team I think I was seeing say a month ago. And so just have a very different opinion of how we might do in March here, given how we've been doing lately.
Yeah, I would say interesting game. Definitely the most disappointing loss of the season in my mind, just in terms of where the team's at and just needing a road win. But they started off hot. It was good to see. Shot the ball really well in the first half. But truthfully, kind of their glaring holes all season came to fruition again. In terms of, like, I feel like every team we play has a stretch where they just can't miss. And it's not that I think we have a poor group of defenders, because I actually think it's the opposite. But this team definitely like rides waves, and when they're playing really well, they're hard to beat. But you can just tell they're in a funk, and when that happens, like Iowa, they're just traditionally this team that comes off screens around like the elbow, and they're dangerous. And we let them get hot, and it was basically a shooting match. I mean, back and forth. But yeah, I mean, we shot 6 of 10 from 3 in the first half, which to me is a huge development, because that's been my biggest kind of gripe with this team, is not shooting the ball well from deep. And I thought we saw some really good individual performances. I think Chucky's playing the best on the team right now. And Tyler Wall, when he wasn't in foul trouble, was a difference maker. And I actually think him getting his 5th foul in overtime changed the game, because I think we win the game if he doesn't foul out. I mean, he was taking it over. So that was disappointing. But it's just one of those games that you're going to look back on and be like, that could be, like Frem's talking about, that's the difference between being, who knows what seed they are, but that could be the difference between them being like a 5 and a 6 or a 6 and a 7. because those road wins just matter more. And that was a quad one opportunity they let slip away. And the free throw shooting was disappointing because it hasn't been really a trend this year. They just didn't shoot well from the line. The one thing I will say, and I don't know if either of you had this thought. So we had the technical foul. We had 2 free throws in the second half. It was late in the second half, and guard chose to have Chucky shoot the free throws, which surprised me because I instantly thought in my mind that should be Max Klesmit. So, and he missed both. I mean, it is what it is. But that there's a lot of things that changed the game. That goaltending call was weird, where all of a sudden you just lose the ball and the points. But just like we didn't do enough little things well to win the game, and we definitely had a lot of chances.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Nebraska loss hurt more because I think we were up by like 19 or 21, and we actually choked. This one, Iowa's a good team, just like Nebraska. Iowa's a good team. I think we're up 13. We did let them whittle it back down. We started out really hot from 3. I think Iowa also, their defense wasn't great in the opening 5-7 minutes. That got better for them. It kills me when it feels like we don't make adjustments to what Iowa's doing. So Iowa probably hit 8 mid-range jumpers in a row, 9 mid-range jumpers in a row. I mean, at some point, when does the center come out hot on that guard to force a double team and to make that either try to make a pass through traffic? I think in the beginning of the year, I was thinking about this defensively, where Crowell and Wall would attack the screener on these screen and rolls. They would attack the player with the ball coming off the screen. We actually did that a lot in the opening 10 games. And now we don't do that anymore. And I don't know if that's a fatigue thing, if that's, hey, the competition's a little bit better, but we have strength of schedule, we're number 3 in the country. So it's not like we played bad teams early. So I think that's the frustrating part of the game for me. I mean, Chucky played really well. There were a lot of weird things in the game. I actually liked what Storr did mostly. I don't think Klesmit had a great game again, but with Maryland that changed. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Again, I think it's tough to win on the road in the Big Ten. It just sucks when you lose 2 games almost so eerily similar that you could have, I think, probably gone ahead even more, right? Nebraska, even similar. You probably could have gone up even more than 21 the way it was going. Iowa, I think the same thing in the first half. I expected Iowa to come back. I didn't think they'd be up by 7 at any point of the game, though. I think it is a testament that we clawed back. But yeah, it was just kind of an interesting game. And I think very disappointing. Probably second or third, or first or second most disappointing loss of the year. Because, like you said, I think we needed a road win. Let's transition to Maryland then, just because that was yesterday. That's pretty fresh in our minds. Big win, 174-70. Talk about your reaction to the win, and maybe just who stood out to you as you watched the game from maybe the previous 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, I think Chris hit it with Chucky right now. I think that is kind of wild just to see how he's kind of kicked it now and high speed right now in terms of being a go-to guy. I think late in the game right now. Yeah, really, really tough. That is a game where, and I think I'll just say Maryland is a pretty darn good basketball team. I think their performance following up against Illinois here, or just previous to this game shows they can hang with just about anyone. They have some really, I think top end scorers there on that team. Really, some really young talent. I think that's going to be hopefully blossoming. I think in the Big Ten for them. And so I don't want to say okay, Maryland was just a bottom tier team that we should have beat by more. But I think that the last 10 minutes of that game is just a great example of how we could not pull ahead. Even Klesmit, knocks down the 3 finally, doing the night, signal and everything. And we just could not put them away, even down to the last was it 2 seconds on the clock, even the pundits afterwards saying that, maybe that should have been, I think on Klesmit, if it was maybe a an offensive foul, and maybe Maryland gets the ball with 2 seconds left, on their basket over there. So yeah, just really, really frustrating how we couldn't close. I think that's just a sentiment there. And, this is a home game. You'd think you have the crowd with you there. Maryland, a good basketball team, but definitely somebody we should have been able to create some distance from late down, the stretch there. And just once again, not shooting as well. And, really having to lean on your veteran players there with, Tyler Wall, Chucky Hepburn. And it just, once again, shows to me that this team is going to struggle in big moments, and they're going to have to grind to get everything, to get anything, I think, really, for that matter. They're really going to have to grind and really work hard, and nothing's going to come easy for this team, I think, in March. And that's what concerns me, even in a first round matchup in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I thought overall they played pretty well, considering the deficiencies, right? 4 for 17 from 3. Tale as old as time this year. There's not a good 3-point shooting team. Turnovers in the first half, I believe they had 8 or 9. Like, another trend that continues to happen game after game. Really frustrating. But the second half, they played a lot better. I want to say every time I kept looking up at the scoreboard, it was like we were up 7 or 8, pretty consistently 7 or 8. And so I was telling Phil before we started, I never felt sitting there that they were going to lose that game. Like, I was pretty confident. We were shooting really well from the free throw line. What do we go? 20? I'm looking at 28 for 31. Insanely good. I mean, that's a good sign. My other sort of concern coming out of this game is our bench seems to be regressing. Like, Nolan Winter is getting absolutely exposed right now defensively. John Blackwell played well. He had some good moments in the game yesterday. That was good to see. And here's another nugget. I don't know if any of you noticed, but Carter Gilmore didn't play yesterday. And that was coming off of the Iowa game where he struggled really bad. And Marcus Silver got his minutes. So that's just something to keep an eye on. But Connor Essetian struggled again. Like, we need some of these guys to step up to really make a run the rest of the season. But offensively, I actually thought we played okay. We didn't have a lot of assists. And I felt like there were times we stalled offensively. But like I mentioned for the Iowa game, I think Tyler Wall is starting to hit his stride. He's playing really well. He's kind of carrying us between him and Chucky. And that AJ Storr dunk, can we just talk about it? That was the best. I think that was the best dunk I have ever seen in a college game. Like, I was there. I mean, so it's probably different, but it was so sick. It was with his left hand. Absolutely insane.
Well, yeah, there's probably been, for the Badgers, that's probably the best dunk I've ever seen. And again, it's with his offhand.
Right.
And the way he's kind of weighing it up too, because the defender's actually in decent position. And it just didn't matter. It was just sick.
It was so cool. But this reminds me of the last game against Ohio State at home. I mean, this is kind of where I feel like where the team is right now is this reminds me of an old school Badger basketball team. Like, they're going to hit their free throws. They're going to play well enough defensively. The game's going to be close. But we found a way to win. And maybe maybe we weren't as good as we were when we were number 6. We're not as bad as we were during the 4-game losing streak. We're somewhere in the middle. I think we're good enough to beat good teams, but we're not elite. And I think that's okay. And this team has time to get more connected. Like, offensively, like I said, I feel like they're stalling right now. Like, there are times where it feels like it's turned back the clock 15 years and we're just waiting till the last 5-10 seconds of the shot clock. Whereas earlier in the year we were going faster, getting good shots, players were moving. So if we can get back to that, I think there's room for improvement here. But right now we just kind of got to grind out some wins until we figure that out, and there's still time. It's the beauty of it. 4 regular season games, conference tournament before we get to March Madness. So there is time.
Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, we won. We still scored 74 points, shooting 4 of 17 from 3. I mean, Klesmit, I think, hitting that 3 in the clutch where he came out. I think he came off the screen. I mean, I think that was a shot he was hitting, a month ago, 2 months ago. consistently. And it's funny because, I mean, like you said, Chris, we were up maybe 7, 8 points all game. It did feel that way almost all game. Earlier in the year, we were getting up by 10, 15, 20 points on teams. And I think, yeah, we were playing faster. We weren't gun shy. It's almost like we were making the extra pass that we needed to make in those earlier games. Where now it feels like we're actually giving up good looks, or they're passing off where they actually shouldn't. And I wonder when they look back at the tape as a team and they say, hey, why didn't you take that shot there? Because it just feels like it's a confidence thing. Look, I actually don't mind us taking 3-pointers if, they're open and you shoot the three. Like, I think that's the thing. You have to keep shooting to get out of those funks. So to me, keep shooting it. Store, it feels like, yeah, he's a pretty streaky 3-point shooter, maybe shooting around 30%. And yet, he was hitting some pretty big threes earlier in the year. So I don't necessarily want to say, hey, just go to the bucket all the time, although he looked really good yesterday. I thought he was really efficient. All right, you guys have kind of hinted at it. Before I go that, just a big win. We needed the win. Maryland, I think, has 7 games when they've lost by 1 possession. So it's not, I think Maryland, they're 14-13. I think that's probably a facade of a record. They're probably a little bit better than that showed, than the record shows. This will probably be the last time we talk about this until maybe the conference tournament. What is the ceiling right now in your minds? I mean, and then what is the floor? Come March.
Yeah, I'm sad to say this, but yeah, I just want to kind of note, like, if you go back and look at say a few podcasts ago, I think we definitely had a different tone of this Badger basketball team right now. Yeah, I'd say my ceiling. I'm having a hard time seeing them make it to the Sweet 16 right now. If they could win a game in the NCAA tournament, I think I would be satisfied just with where we're at right now. And I think the floor is making the tournament. Here, and then yeah, I would just like to see us win a game in the tournament because I think it's going to be tough. I think this team's just going to have to really. I think we can compete. I mean, to Chris's point, I think we can compete with anyone. I just do not think it'll be easy to win. I think this team gets in their own way a lot of times. It just is very difficult for this team to find that way to win. And so I think I don't expect us to get blown out by anyone. I think we can compete with anyone. But I just think finding a way to win is really hard for us right now. And without shooting the basketball in March, I think it's extremely difficult to win games and have to grind and get to the free throw line. I mean, you can do it, absolutely. Like Chris said, 100% old school Badger basketball totally reminds me of this. Throughout being a Bucky Badger fan in my lifetime, it just is. It's tough and it's just it's work, right? And it's just banging bodies and getting on the glass and having to play a lot of defense, to win. And nothing's going to come easy for this team, I think. So I would just like to see us get a win in the tournament. Anything after that, I think, would be exciting.
They were walking out of the Kohl Center last night. Shout out David Diaz for being my date last night. But walking out of the Kohl Center, and one of the things we were talking about, and I always need this reminder every year about this time, is the Big Ten is such a grind, and every team basically plays man-to-man physical defense, and it's really hard to gauge a ceiling on a team because who you might see in March, you could see a team that plays all zone. You could see a team that's potentially small, run and gun. Like, it's very different than what the Big Ten is. And I think I said last podcast, I feel like the ceiling is kind of Sweet 16. I'm still kind of there. I think this team can get to the Sweet 16. And from there, I always feel like you're kind of playing with house money. It's very matchup based. So to me, that's kind of where they're at. I think they're a Sweet 16 team still, if they can get clicking offensively. The 3-point thing still scares me, and I'm not going to stop talking about it. I think the floor is a first-round exit. If they really can't get it together, an 11 to 12 seed could come ready to play and kick us out of the tournament right away. I don't have any concerns about making the tournament or I don't think we'll be anything lower than a 7. So we should get a pretty decent matchup. It's just a matter of who you play. Um, but I like I said, I think this team's gonna right the ship. They have time. It feels like little things are starting to happen better, but we need the bench to play better. And if that happens, this team's dangerous again.
Yeah, I think the ceiling is Elite Eight only because I think if we get to the second weekend, we'll have a week to prepare. I mean, that's where my head goes. We'll have the rest. We'll have the week to prepare. That's my ceiling. And then I think my floor is I think we win one game, but I think we could lose the second. And Badger teams almost always win the first game. We always come out to play. We actually have a lot of players that can shoot the three. The only one that really can't is Wall, and I guess Carter Gilmore. I mean, those are really the two that can't. So, yeah, do we have anybody that's elite? I mean, it was Klesmet, not so much recently. But I think you're right. I mean, the 3-point shooting is concerning, but I think we could get to the Elite Eight. I think we have the depth to do it, assuming that they play better. But you're right. The Big Ten is a grind, so it is hard to fully know. I think they end up as a 6 seed. I just have a feeling, and again, I think we're kind of like heat of the moment. We see the struggles. We saw the losing streak. I mean, before that, when we were at number 6, like you said, when we were talking on the podcast, it's like, man, what could this team be? We hit a swoon, of course, under guard as always. So I think we end up as a 6 because our Ken Palm is 22. Our strength of schedule is number 3. We still have big games coming up here. I mean, we could beat Illinois at home. We'll get predictions next week for the last 3 games. But I think that's where we end up. I do want to talk about this week. We have a kind of a bye week. We don't play a weekend game. Our next game is at Indiana next Tuesday. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. This is our first week off really since Christmas. How important is this for us as a team?
I think it's huge. Yeah. This is a get right week. I think this is a week where we got to rest up and hopefully come ready out of the gate. To win that game. Out of the break. I think that's the one game we can win. Indiana. Right now, if I look at the slate, I think that's one I'd really like us to win. Because I don't know about the rest of the games. They're winning those other couple games. Right, Purdue, Illinois. Is that right?
And Rutgers at home.
Rutgers.
Sorry, Rutgers at home. Yeah. Rutgers at home. You'd think. So 2 of 3. I know maybe getting that later, but yeah, I think it's a get right week. And hopefully get some swagger back. I think that was kind of what I saw at the end of the Maryland game with Klesmet. There is finally some swagger. Any of that. I mean, that the store dunk, like you're right, Chris. It was huge, right? Because this is finally some confidence to momentum to build off of that. This team lacks that, and I think that's huge in March. You need to be confident. You need to go out there and believe that you're going to win. You need that in March. It's contagious, and think about the bench. The bench feels that, and everyone just runs off that.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get some extra rest, I think it's good. I actually wish they had another game in between this and Indiana. I think getting that confidence and winning 2 games in a row is really important. And so now if you wait a week and you lose to Indiana, then it's kind of like a week went by and nothing's changed. So we'll see. Indiana plays 2 more games before they play us next Tuesday. Like, they're in a grind in their schedule. So we have to go in and win that game. I feel like that's a must win. So yes, it's important. I don't love the timing because I'd like to see us get clicking before that, but there's a lot of busy weeks ahead, so we'll take a little time.
Well, and maybe there just has been fatigue. I mean, I think Chucky's played almost 40 minutes. How many games in a row? I mean,
yeah, we need Kamari back.
We really do. I mean, I didn't think that would be that big of a loss, and that just wasn't true. I mean, I think that's been bigger than I think people thought it would be. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm not worried about Indiana at all. We always go in there and play well. And they've had better teams than this year. But, it's Big Ten. You're on the road. Anything can happen. But like you said, them playing 2 games before that, that's huge for us because, like you said, they're in the grinding part of their schedule. We'll talk a little bit more just kind of the general state of college basketball. This is something me and Chris were talking about, and I wanted to talk about it. I feel like we talk about refereeing in sports, and people kind of all over the place. Of like conspiracy theories of things being fixed, to refereeing, it all evens out in the end. That it doesn't have that much of an effect. I think if you watch sports enough, especially NFL, but even in basketball, no, like I think refereeing is important. And I think I just am somewhat like frustrated or lamenting. This may be my own diatribe here, but I just think that the Big Ten refereeing is bad. I think it's been bad all year. And it's not like, oh, it's just been bad against the Badgers. No, I think it's like in these games, you see it called in a particular way where it's like, we're just going to let them do whatever they want for the first half, let them play super aggressively. Come second half, we're almost going to call everything, and it's almost like we're anticipating calls before a foul actually happens. Do you guys agree with me? Is this bad? And if so, I guess what's frustrating to you about it, and it's, again, not just calls against the Badgers, I think it's even calls the Badgers against other teams where they're calling things where I'm like, I don't know if that was actually a foul. Speak to it.
Yeah, I don't know if I have quite as much of a take on this. I think to me, I kind of maybe paint some broad strokes. Just college basketball in general, and where the refereeing is at. I'd like to think that when it comes to tournament time, that I think the refereeing, kind of comes out in the wash and is better. I don't recall seeing a ton of bad calls, just in the NCAA tournament in general. So I'm hopeful. I will say in this kind of more of the really big picture societal move of like reviewing everything and having like the perfect call all the time. I'm a little more of the old school train of like referees are people and they're going to make mistakes. I guess this is kind of going back to some of our younger days of, doing some intramural refereeing, or I remember having to do I actually went through that at Whitewater, the whole like, a training for basketball and everything, on the fly and making the calls, and it's intense, right? So I think, Phil, your point is valid. I think the criticism there for sure, especially I think last night was a good example with Maryland and Badgers there. But I will say that I am a bit exhausted of all the reviews and the replays and all the players every single time. It's, let's look at this play, let's look at that play. And so it's tough. I think, how do we find the balance in general of getting things right? But then I think this desire to always get everything right, and in real time, it's tough. I think I can say I can't sit here and say I can do it better. Even just going through that experience with intramurals, it's tough, and there's a lot of pressure on each and every play and see things live. So I'm curious what Chris has to say, but I think it's a tough job.
Let's start the hashtag refs are people too. Let's get that going.
Yeah, that was the worst $7.25 job I had in college, was reffing intramural flag football. But I think college basketball has sort of an identity crisis right now. Like, I'm not quite sure if they know who they want to be, and I think that's impacting how games are officiated. Like, one thing I've noticed this year is that you don't see barely any charge calls anymore. Like, they've basically taken that out of the game. I actually have no issue with that. Even as a Badger fan who we grew up like cheering charges more than 3-pointers, but and then you have like these ticky-tack calls. And so here's where I go back to the Big Ten. Like, the Big Ten throughout the years has been a physical conference. And like you alluded to, Phil, I don't care how you call the game, but call it consistent. And that's definitely not happening. Especially recently, I've noticed it more. Like, for example, Chucky's a really good on-ball defender, and he plays really tight. And yet, he gets calls for, I feel like, playing good defense. And I don't know where this comes from in terms of like how refs come out of the second half and decide they're going to call the game. I don't know if that's a conversation they have, but it does feel inconsistent. And when it reminds me of the national championship game, right when the Badgers lost, the first half they let them play. It was a great game. Second half they came out and called everything, and it ruins the game. And so when I say like college basketball has an identity crisis, if you want to showcase players and how good they are, you have to let them play and sometimes play through a little bit of contact. And when you get to the tournament, you don't want that to impact the game. And I don't think this changed the game last night, but there was a lot of calls that I felt like it didn't need to be anything, or the refs truly didn't know what they were going to call, and the whistle came 2 seconds after the play happened. You're like, what? Like, what are you calling? So I don't know. Like, grand scheme of things, I feel like this has always been an issue. But I think as a game, they need to figure out, can players be physical or not? Because right now it's trending towards no, you can't be. And that hurts teams that like to play physical. And maybe that's why the Big Ten struggles in the tournament. I have no idea. But it's
because
interesting.
it is physical. I mean, and I think that's the thing. It's almost like they lose control of the game a little bit because they allow too much. But again, to Frem's point, refereeing's hard, and I just would be curious. I don't watch enough SEC or ACC or Big East or Big 12 to see differences. So I don't know in those conferences how it's being called, or how fans are always mad at referees for stuff. But I'd be interested to talk to a more objective fan that watches a lot of SEC basketball or ACC and say, hey, what do you think of the referee? Because yeah, it just feels like with the Big Ten, I've just seen that script play out so much, and it's just kind of annoying. I mean, just call it how you're going to do it. Take control of the game and call it how you're going to do it throughout the whole game. Do you guys have any last?
Yeah, here's the one I don't like, and this is the one I've noticed more than ever before, and I think it's ruining basketball at every level of the game. But the offensive player initiating contact on a defender and the referee calling defensive fouls. That's the one that I do think is hurting the games pretty significantly.
Yeah, and you're right. And there's so much nuance to the call, so it's like at times it probably could be a foul on them, but it feels like a lot of times it's not. And that's not just Badgers. That's the other team they're playing too, where Wall makes contact or Crowell, and it almost feels like, well, they had their hands up. Maybe they encroached in their space somewhat. I don't know.
Yeah, but right. If I'm straight up and a guy lowers his head and bulldozes into me and shoots it, I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. And you see that called against any team, and I just don't. I don't understand how that's evolved in basketball.
You're supposed to take the charge, which they don't call anymore.
Which they don't call. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be curious. Yeah. Brian, last thoughts.
I think you're right on, Chris. I think if you're coaching basketball or you're teaching a young person how to play, that's exactly it, right? If you're straight up, your feet are planted, you're not moving into the offensive player. What are you supposed to teach there? And I love the no call there, and let them play through that, right? Especially if the offensive player is seeking out the contact. I think the NBA is even trying to figure that out a bit. They're really trying to get away from that leg kick, it's like the famous, Reggie Miller, and they're calling Steph on it now of kicking that leg out and initiating that contact. And it's like, you're trying to bait the defender. You're trying to get to the free throw line there. But yeah, really trying to understand, we shouldn't be penalizing the defender for trying to play sound basketball.
Yeah. Give us your thoughts on Twitter, or talk to one of us throughout the week, because I'd be curious to your guys' all thoughts. I mean, everybody feels like they're always mad about the refs. I think if you're an objective fan, you just want consistency, and we know when it's a good refereed game. I think that's the thing. Like, you kind of know it when you see it. But anyway, let's move forward. I do want to talk more the general kind of state of college basketball. Who's really good? I I think let's talk more about that next week. Let's take a deeper dive into some teams because I think we could do some better content. I think if we put a little more time into it, and I do want to give us, I think, maybe 15 minutes on that, and we're not going to have time today. I think we started roughly 9:35, so let's actually move forward to All-Star games and Hollywood award shows, which sports kind of ish. A question for you guys: do you like them? Do you watch them? Pro Bowl was a couple weeks ago. We just had the BAFTA Movie Awards. That's the British Film Awards show. The Academy Awards are coming up. NBA All-Star Weekend was this past weekend. NHL was also, or 2 weeks ago. All right. Do you like them? Will you watch them?
I think award shows, I can't say I'm consistent with them. I think it depends. Like an Oscars, I think is something, is pretty classic. Top end, things like Grammys I can go for. I think it's tough. The nostalgia in me, and I was just looking back at some highlights of that was whatever the 03, 04 Pistons. They had, four All-Stars in the same, NBA Eastern All-Star team. It was like with Rip Hamilton, Ben Wallace, Chauncey Billups, Rasheed Wallace. Those are the days. I think I remember when Jordan, came back through with the Wizards and he's out there, playing against Kobe in an NBA All-Star game. I think there's a lot of just question marks when it comes to All-Star games. The NFL. I mean, flag football. I go on that route. I kind of give them credit. I think they kind of made flag football cool, and that's become an Olympic sport now. So I think there is kind of something there that maybe they can run with. I give them credit for trying to figure that out because the games they were having before this were unwatchable. I think the NBA really has to figure it out. I think everyone's calling for like some home court advantage after this last game where there's no defense. So the players are saying afterwards that no one cares or no one's really there to compete. So yeah, it's too bad. I remember growing up watching some really fun Pro Bowls, some really fun MLB All-Star games. And even I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was just fun growing up watching those games, with football, basketball, baseball, and I just don't see that anymore right now. And so that's where I'm a little, just kind of a little like, check the score or something, but definitely not something I want to sit down and watch right now. Much rather watch some, Hollywood award shows, I think.
Yeah, so for me, the Grammys, I'm all in. Love to see the live performances. I don't care about the awards. Doesn't mean anything to me. All-Star games, here's my take. If the sport has a risk of injury, I don't want to watch it. If it doesn't mean anything. Baseball kind of had it figured out with the home field advantage thing. I don't know if that was the right way to go, but the fact that it had something on the line, it made it watchable. And I still watch the MLB All-Star game every year. But basketball, football, hockey, like if you can get hurt, players just aren't going to try. And I actually don't blame them for not trying. That they're getting paid beyond playing in the All-Star game. So that's why sports where there's not an injury risk or all is created neutral, I'll give you the example. NASCAR, my favorite. Their all-star races in the middle of the season, it's amazing because it's just for money. And like I said, there's not this injury risk. So to me, I don't see the point of them anymore. I'd almost just prefer them to get awarded, like, hey, you were an all-star. But until they can figure out how to make it watchable, I don't think it puts on a good show. I don't think it's good for kids to watch the NBA All-Star game and players not play defense. So I could leave that. It's a kind of in a weird time with All-Star games. It's a good topic, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just like, I probably bring this question up because I'm kind of the get off your lawn kind of guy with this. Like, I just don't like them at all. The only one I do like on some level is the MLB weekend. That's the only one. And they made it even Home Run Derby, which is still fun. And the game itself. And what's cool about the game is they actually have the in-person interviews on the field when they're playing. Like, I actually think that's really cool to get in the mind of a defender or, what they're seeing as their kind of, just waiting for the play to happen. That's the one I am like semi curious about. Hollywood award shows. The Oscars is cool because I like movies. I like films. I'm gonna try to watch. I'll try to watch as many as I can, but I still won't watch the award show because I don't know. We have this celebrity culture too in America that I think is kind of gross, and I don't want to support that. And so assuredly, I'm kind of against all of them except for the MLB All Star. But I understand why they're there. I understand you want to honor these players. You want to showcase them. You want to honor people's work and music and movies. I get it. But I think, especially because of our celebrity culture, that's a little bit deeper, but I don't really like that part of who we are as America. So that's why I'm kind of against it. But I do try to watch the Oscar films because, they're good movies. They really are. Do you guys have any final thoughts?
No, not too much. They don't excite me that much. At least the like you said, Chris, the All-Star games.
Yeah, I kind of like this trend of skills competitions, right? Like if you find the right thing. Like I like the 3-point contest. I like the home run derby. Like things like that where you can showcase talent. I think is a much better show than watching a game of players that aren't trying.
Yeah, the dunk contest used to be pretty big. And I think it's gotten not as cool, but that's because the top players don't want to do it.
Well, and they're just running out of ideas, right? Like,
yeah,
different ways you can dunk a ball.
So it's almost like you have to try to make it more novel,
right?
Somehow.
Yeah.
So that was like Aaron Gordon's jumping over a car or a truck or whatever that was that one year. Was it Aaron Gordon?
That was Blake Griffin, wasn't it?
Blake Griffin.
But then he did over the hood. Like, come on.
I will say, just a quick take, Phil. Like your get off your lawn stuff it's a whole thing of like NBA is the great example, like load management, and to Chris's point, like I get to like why players don't want to play, but there is just a mentality I don't think we're ever going to get back anymore. I think people know too much. They're able to leverage too much. Like, I'm not going to hurt myself. My body's kind of the product here. Like, right. Like your body's what makes the money, for lack of better words. And so, it's just, I don't think we're going to see those days of the elites going head to head. I still remember like Sean Taylor decleating a punter in a Pro Bowl, NFL Pro Bowl game. And we're never going to see that again, right? And so I think there is some of that like just nostalgia of what was. And I think what we have to accept what is a new era of professional sports where people aren't going to risk things and they know too much now. And they're like, yeah, why would I do that? And it's just what it is, I think, at this point. But makes you reminisce when you look back to the days of old, to say the least.
Well, yeah, and the competition, I think, mattered. I mean, it's like these guys were just obsessed with winning still. Where now it's like, well, in the grand scheme, this doesn't matter. And that's the thing, like, even Pro Bowl, it's like the All-Pro award is actually what matters more. If you get first or second team All-Pro, that's actually, like, what matters more than the Pro Bowl. Tyrod Taylor got to a Pro Bowl. So did somebody else got in. Who's the Ravens backup quarterback?
Huntley?
Tyler Huntley made a Pro Bowl because of all the alternates. So it just gets to this point where you're like, yeah, they don't care, so we probably shouldn't care that much,
But it is interesting, like, I'm sure both of you watched The Last Dance. Like, watching those, like, when Michael Jordan, when they were filming Space Jam, like, all the players were flying out to California to play, like, intense pickup games. Yep. You would never see things like that. And like, when you watch the All-Star games, there were rivalries. They wanted to go up against each other. And yeah, I think to Brian's point, like, culture-wise, just where we're at, it's just not where we are as a society anymore.
That's why it is cool to see, like, 49ers and Eagles, like, actually hate each other as teams. Like, to get some of that, like, oh no, like, this is this fierce competition and you actually do hate each other. Like, I kind of like that. Even like, I think some of the rivalries in the NFL still have that, which is cool. And I'm sure NBA, there's some of that, but yeah, like you said, just different era, different time. All right. Well, let's transition to our last two things. First off, breaking news today. Eric Hosmer retired. First baseman, most known for his time on the Royals. Then he made bank, went to the Padres. Spent half a year with the Red Sox, I want to say. And then came to the Cubs last year, where I don't think he lasted the full year on the team. Rip. Thought he might be the next Lance Berkman, if you remember that, Chris.
Lance the Pants.
I don't necessarily need your thoughts on his career, but I do want to play a game. What do you think his career salary was in the MLB? You can't look it up. Take a gander.
Like, what do you make total?
What he made total,
It's
MLB.
incredible. I'm gonna really embarrass myself here.
I'll go 210 million.
That is great. Playing some prices right.
Yeah, prices right rules for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna go like 197,000. Feels right.
197,000?
Sorry, 197 million. Sorry, not thousand.
Okay, that's the nap talking there.
The nap was still
197 million, 210 million. By Price's Right rules, you both lose. It was 175 million.
Oh,
but
how about that?
You're still pretty close.
I should have been with 1,000. I would have won.
Eric Hosmer made $175 million playing baseball.
Guys, what do we do with
our lives?
Can I share two Eric Hosmer stories?
Sure.
Number one, shout out to Matt Gardner, who in fantasy baseball changed his name to Bros Before Hosmer because he thought his name was Hosmer, which I didn't have the heart to tell him his name was Hosmer. So we'll always go down in infamy.
Is that that's Canadian? That's Canadian,
Yeah,
right?
right.
It's all Hoser.
It's so good. And number two, I loved Eric Hosmer. If anyone that knows me knows this. I once drafted him in our fantasy baseball league in the first round of the draft. That did not work out, but he will always go down as a first round fantasy pick in the performance enhancers.
That's high praise. That's high praise. I love those young Royals teams. Like when they had like Alex Gordon, Eric Hosmer, they had all the relief pitching, like Wade Davis, Kelvin Herrera,
Lorenzo Cain.
I mean, those are that was a Alcides Escobar.
Alcides, yeah.
Oh yeah, that was awesome. But hey, 13 years, good career. Obviously set up for the rest of his life. So, Eric Hosmer, we salute you. All right. Last important topic. We started with AOL versus MSN. Now we're thinking food. Condiments and sauces. So this could be ketchup, mustard, could be salad dressing, could be Chick-fil-A sauce, if you're partial, barbecue. When it comes to condiments and sauces in your food palate and taste, are you always going for these things? Most of the time going for these things? I'm not going to give you a middle. Are you rarely doing this? Or maybe sometimes to rarely? Or are you like, I'm really almost always against condiments and sauces?
Do you want us to pick sauces versus condiments, or just it's more sauce, condiment versus none?
I'm lumping them together.
Package deal.
Package. I like that.
I think, yeah, I mean, there is some differences for sure. So you could talk about anecdotally what sauces you use, why, For the longest time, I only ate ketchup, and that was the only sauce that I would eat. Or condiment. That was it. Forever. My life has changed. But, I mean, there's people out there like that. So, where are you guys at?
Yeah, I think you might offend some people if you put ketchup in the sauce family, because I think I'll give you the slogan: the boss is in the sauce, and ketchup, mustard, they're not in the family. They're on the outside. So
it's a condiment, though.
Hot take.
It's a condiment, right? But it's not a sauce. What are you gonna call it? Tomato sauce? It's not tomato sauce, right? It's not a mustard sauce, right? It doesn't roll with barbecues, you know. Barbecue
So you're kind of
sauce,
against the whole
Chick-fil-A.
premise of you're against the whole premise of the question.
I think a bit.
That's what I'm
yeah.
feeling from this.
Because sauce needs to stand its ground.
Okay, so speak to what you do then. So we kind
Yeah,
of know.
I mean, I think you got to look at it tiers. You know, clearly, barbecue sauce, Chick-fil-A sauce, maybe a cheese sauce in this great state of Wisconsin, are up here, right? You come down, you got like whatever ketchup, relish, mayo, whatever you want down there with ketchup, yeah, all that, and then obviously you have no condiment, which I think is just unacceptable.
So you're a most of the time kind of guy.
Absolutely, no doubt.
Okay, glad we got there.
All of that for a non-answer.
I'm a sauce guy. Come on.
Yeah, most of the time. And Frem alluded to it. I just want to give the call out. When Culver's introduced the cheese sauce, that was a game changer. I'm just going to leave it as that.
Yeah, maybe I should have thought about dressing versus sauce versus condiment. Those are all different, I guess, now that I think about it. I still love ketchup. Ranch barbecue I do. Chick-fil-A sauce I do. Some dressings, but I really don't do it that often. So, and I used to not eat salad at all. Only ketchup on things. Hamburgers, that's all I'd eat on it. Not even cheese. My friends get really mad at me. They actually said it wasn't a burger the way I was eating it. Although I thought I was a purist with the burger, personally. All right. Any final thoughts of this?
Got to go sauce. That's all I'm gonna say.
Sauce Gardner.
Gotta go Sauce Gardner. Why don't we call Maddie Sauce Gardner?
It's a new nickname.
Good.
Maddie
Start
Sauce
that.
Constant Gardner.
No, he's just the constant.
We'll workshop that. Thank you for listening. This was take 2. Take 2 is better than take 1, although take 1 was good.
It was off to a hot start.
Yeah, we probably should have just kept going.
I appreciate
All I have
it.
to say is we're friend purists, so we're loyal. Thank you so much for listening. Please respond on Twitter to us. Talk to us on there. Send us your questions, your ideas, your thoughts. Happy to be with you. Hope it was a good listen for you. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.